August 8, 2013. It's just after midnight on Highway 277, a long, dark stretch of Texas road 40 miles from the nearest city. This is where 26-year-old Brandon Lawson made one of the most disturbing 911 calls in American history and then disappeared. Brandon was a father of 4, a hard-working oil field man. No history of just vanishing. That night he had a fight with his longtime girlfriend Ladessa. Something small, but it escalated. He grabbed his keys, his phone, and stormed out. He got into his silver Ford F-150 and headed north on Highway 277. It was a warm summer night. No moon, just stars and the black shape of mesquite trees lining the road. At 12:34 a.m. he called his father, saying he was on his way over, but halfway there the truck ran out of gas. That's when the night began to turn. Brandon called his brother Kyle for help. Kyle agreed to bring him a gas can, but in the middle of their call, Brandon's voice changed. He sounded tense. Breathing faster, he said, "3 guys are chasing me into the woods." Minutes later, Brandon dialed 911. What he said has been analyzed for years, but the words are chilling. "Yes, I'm in the middle of a field, pulled some guys over, gonna run into the woods, please hurry." Then, his voice drops, almost like he's whispering, "There's one chasing me." And then something else, a second voice, low, unclear, almost growling. The dispatcher tried to get his location, but the call cut off. By the time Kyle reached Highway 277, Brandon's truck was there, driver's door unlocked, but no sign of him. What Kyle did see were shapes moving in the brush just beyond the fence line. Too dark to tell if they were people or something else. When he called out his brother's name, everything went silent. That was the last time anyone heard Brandon Lawson's voice. When a person disappears in the middle of the night, you expect chaos. Panic, lights flashing, people shouting. But on Highway 277, it was quiet. Too quiet. Kyle parked his truck behind Brandon's abandoned F-150 and stepped out with a flashlight. The air was heavy, still. Even the sound of crickets felt muted. He swept his light toward the roadside fence. Beyond it, a sea of waist high grass rolled toward a dark line of mesquite trees. "Brandon," he called. No answer. He tried again. This time, there was a rustle in the brush. A flicker of movement, maybe 20 yards away. For a moment, Kyle thought he saw someone standing there. Tall, still, watching. But when the light hit them, they were gone. Police arrived a short time later. The officer on scene thought Brandon might have wandered off to avoid trouble. He had an outstanding warrant for an old charge, but Kyle knew. This wasn't his brother hiding. Something was wrong. They began a quick sweep of the roadside. No footprints leading away from the truck. No broken grass. No dropped phone or hat. It was as if Brandon had stepped into the dark and the dark had closed behind him. At 1:10 a.m., Kyle's phone rang. It was Brandon. The voice was frantic, almost panting. "I'm bleeding." Before Kyle could respond, a strange sound bled through the call. It wasn't static, it wasn't wind. It was lower, like a growl. And then the call cut. For the next few hours, they kept searching. But the longer they stayed, the more it felt like the road itself was swallowing their voices. Sound didn't travel far. Light didn't seem to carry beyond a certain point. One deputy later said, "It's like there was a wall in the air. Something was pressing in on us." But dawn, there was no sign of Brandon. Only his truck, his wallet, and the gas can Kyle had brought for him still full. The 911 call was replayed over and over, by police, by the family, by strangers on the internet, every time someone heard something new. Officially, the dispatcher logged it as a distress call, but the recording was messy, full of strange background sounds. Not wind, not traffic, something heavier. At 12 seconds in, you can hear it. A second voice, deep, muffled, not speaking, more like growling. Some people claimed it said, "Stay still." Others swore it was just noise. But when audio techs isolated the sound, they found something chilling. The voice wasn't just in the background. It overlapped Brandon's own words, as if it was right next to him. Kyle, desperate for answers, kept calling his brother's phone. Most times it went straight to voicemail. But at 3:28 a.m., someone answered. Not Brandon, not anyone he knew, just breathing slow, steady, and then a whisper, "You're next." The call disconnected. When Kyle tried to call back, the number was no longer in service. Searchers combed both sides of the highway in daylight. The land was flat, open. If Brandon had walked away, they should have seen him. But about a mile north, in a patch of dry brush, they found something else. 3 parallel scratches carved deep into a fence post. Too high for a coyote, too clean for barbed wire. The wood around them was warm. In the early morning chill, one deputy laughed it off. But that night he refused to return to that stretch of road. For years, Highway 277 had stories about lights in the fields, figures on the roadside, and people who vanished. But until Brandon Lawson, no one had caught the sound of it on tape. In the daylight, the field where Brandon made his 911 call looked harmless. Just yellowed grass and a line of crooked mesquite trees in the distance. But at night, it was different. 2 nights after Brandon vanished, Kyle returned with a small group of volunteers. They had flashlights, radios, and the belief that if they just shouted loud enough, Brandon would answer. But the radios started acting strange, static popping, and then silence. Dead air. They split into pairs, sweeping the fence line. Kyle and a deputy moved along the path where Brandon's voice had been heard last. The grass was bent here, pressed down like something had passed through something heavy. At 1:42 a.m., Kyle stopped. In the beam of his flashlight, about 30 yards ahead, was a shape. Tall, thin, completely still. It wasn't a tree. It wasn't a man. Its edges seemed to ripple. The deputy called out. No answer. They took a few steps forward, and then it moved. Not toward them, not away, just sideways like it was gliding. Kyle saw it covered 20 feet without making a sound. Then, as his light caught it, the beam bent. The shape blurred, and it was gone. They didn't run. They didn't speak. They just turned and walked back to the trucks. When they got there, the deputy looked at Kyle. His voice was flat. We're not going to find him out here. Not alive. Later that night, Kyle's phone buzzed. No number. Just the word filed. He opened it. It was a photo, blurry, dark. But in the center was a pale, narrow face, watching from between the mesquite trees. The time stamp on the photo was 12:53 a.m., 20 minutes before they saw the shape. By the 5th night, the search for Brandon Lawson was no longer just a rescue mission. It was survival. A larger search team came in. Deputies, dogs, volunteers. They worked in tight lines, scanning the grass for anything, scraps of clothing, a dropped shoe, a phone. The dogs caught a scent almost immediately. It led them north and east toward a patch of dead mesquite trees. Halfway there, the lead K9 stopped. It whimpered. And then it lay down, refusing to go further. The handler said it was acting like it had hit a wall, an invisible wall. The team pressed forward without the dogs. That's when they found them. Footprints, bare feet, wide apart like the person was running. They matched Brandon's size, but they were wrong. The toes pointed backward. The prints led straight toward the dead mesquite patch and then stopped. No turn, no sign of doubling back, just gone. And there in the center of the patch, the ground was bare, a perfect circle. No grass, no weeds, only dust. One deputy noticed something in the dirt, small, pale shapes, bone fragments. Tests later showed they weren't human, at least not entirely. That night, as the team packed up, one volunteer swore he saw someone standing by Brandon's truck, tall, still, waiting. When he approached, the figure stepped back into the grass. He followed for 20 yards, then realized there were 2 sets of eyes staring back at him. One human, one not. He didn't follow any further. 11 years have passed, and Highway 277 still keeps its secret. Brandon Lawson has never been found. In the months after his disappearance, his family returned to the same stretch of road again and again. Sometimes in daylight, sometimes in the dead of night, and almost every time something happened. One night, Ledessa, Brandon's girlfriend, swore she saw him, not as a ghost, not as a shadow, but standing on the shoulder of the highway barefoot, his shirt torn, his face pale. She pulled over, opened the door, and as she stepped out, he turned. His eyes locked on hers, and then something tall and black stepped out from behind him. It took one long stride, and they were both gone. The 9/11 recording is still out there. People play it at night. They slow it down. They swear they can hear things no one noticed before. Some claim that if you listen with headphones, you can hear a third sound. Not Brandon, Not the second voice, but a steady rhythm, like footsteps in the grass. Even stranger drivers on Highway 277 have reported their radios cutting out at mile marker 385, right where Brandon's truck was found. The static always begins the same way. First, a low hum, then a faint voice. Help me. Late one summer night, a trucker parked on the shoulder there to rest. He woke an hour later to tapping on his driver's window. When he looked out, there was no one there. But in the dust on the glass were 3 parallel scratches. Brandon Lawson's case is still open. Some say he ran, some say he was taken, and some don't think it matters. Because whatever waits out there in the fields by Highway 277I doesn't give people back.